Well, Sam, it's a real privilege to welcome you to High Performance. So we'll start at the start where we do with everybody. What's your definition of high performance?
For me, it's in two parts, really. The first part being the easier one, which I think is finding your own way to get to the elite level of whatever it is that you're doing. But then I think what separates sort of good from great is the ability to adapt and be flexible to stay in that sort of elite bracket at the top. I think high performance for me is having that ability to, whatever changes, things out of your own control, you can adapt and stay right at the top level.
Well, let's start at the start then, because I think that theme of having to adapt and change is something that you were adopting from a really young age. That I think there's a common perception about you that you were this teenage prodigy where you almost had it easy when you came through at Wigan as a young man. But there's actually something that was going on behind the scenes there that is far different from the reality.
Yeah, well, when coming through as a young kid, as a 7 to 11-year-old, I was one of the best players, and I think I was just faster than most kids. Then sort of into my teens, from sort of 14, 15, 16, I was a late developer. There was lads my age getting beards and going through puberty a lot faster than I was, and I was real small, pretty skinny, and as much as I wanted it and tried, I wasn't up to standard really. And when I left school, I got asked to come on the Wigan Academy, and they've got a few ways they do it. So some lads will get paid money, and they go to college. So they go to college, do something there through the day, and then they go straight to train at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
But they're all getting paid, which was the majority of the group. Maybe out of 20, there'd probably be about 15 all getting paid. But then they keep some on what's called pay as you play. So you have to get your own job and they earn your money that way. But then if you play and you win, you get 25 quid. So I was one of the pay as you play young lads, so I had to get a job as soon as I left school. My ideal was finish high school, get a contract, go to college, and that's what I wanted to do. But that wasn't to be. I just got told, you're not in that group.
So tell us about that moment then, because that always intrigues me, because that's a real crucible moment in your career. You can either believe what the coaches are telling you, that you're not as good as the others, or they don't have that much faith in you, or you can bite down on your gum shield and find a different way.
I think as a real young kid, I just, what do you want to be when you grow up? Rugby player. That was it. And it was only when I got to about 13 that I realised you can't just choose what you do. It might not work out. And when I got told that, look, you're not going to get paid, and I knew I wasn't at the same level. It wasn't that there was anything sinister in it. I wasn't as good as the other players. So I fully understood it when I got told. But I still wanted it, and I wanted it more than other lads, and I knew I did. There was lads that were getting paid, and they were at college, and they were buying a nice car, and I knew I wanted it more than them. I just couldn't do it. So it was frustrating. So I knew I was going to stick at it. That's all I wanted to do. So I got a job as an apprentice greenkeeper on a golf course, because it was a job that I could start really early and I'd be finished by 3 o'clock, meaning I could get back to Wigan, because we'd start training at 4:30, because most lads were only going to college. So around 4:30 we had to be in training, and a lot of jobs wouldn't allow that. But yeah, I found this job as a greenkeeper, so I'd start at 5 a.m, finish like 3 o'clock. But it was in Ashton, a bit of a drive from Wigan at that time. I couldn't drive, I was too young. So I rented, I got a loan off my grandma for £1,000, bought a scooter, because I was only 16, and I used to get on my scooter in the morning to work, and then after work go training. And Sean Wayne, now the England boss, was the academy coach at the time, and he just wouldn't pick me in the team. So I was doing this, I was getting up, I was going to work, I was so tired, and we'd finish training at like 8-9 o'clock at night, every night. or 4 nights, 5 nights a week, and I'd go home, have some food, go to bed, get up, and I'd be raking bunkers and cutting grass at 5 o'clock in the morning again, and not getting picked to play, which was all I wanted to do. And I used to come home and I'd say to my dad, yeah, I've not been picked again this week. And my dad used to say, well, you need to go and ask Sean, go and speak to Sean and ask him why. So I'd knock on Sean's office, Sean, why am I not picked this week? And he'd go, right. They'd write a list down. The list was this long, and I knew, it was a long list. A lot of things I couldn't do. A lot of it, I was still pretty slight, and I couldn't argue with it. I was like, yeah, there's better kids, and that went on for like a full year. I got a few games in and out when there was injuries, and then towards the end of the year, there was a semi-final, and it was Wigan against Widnes. And in the semi-final, I was just carrying water. A mass brawl kicked off right at the end, 13 on 13. Everyone throwing punches. And we won the game, but we got 8 players banned in this semi-final.
Right.
I was the only one smiling because I was like, I must be in. So I played the final for the under-18s the next week. I was in, played pretty well. And, I thought this, I'm in it here, I played well in a final, won. Thought that might be the thing that pushes me on. I went for a meeting at the club, and they said, "Oh, we've nothing for you for the next season," because I'd still only played sort of 6 or 7 games, and the fact that I played in the final was not through earning it; it was through luck of a fight kicking off. And they said, you can go somewhere else if you want, or you can come back again next year and do the pay as you play, £25 if you get picked and win. And that was tough. That was the point where I thought it's probably not going to be for me at Wigan.
So let's just pause there a minute, because you've described that this has gone on for a year this far, and I'm assuming that for 90% of people listening to this, they'd have decided it wasn't for them long before this second meeting. So when you're getting up at 5 a.m, you're going doing the greenkeeping, you then go into training, getting the news that you're not picked, and having to go again. What did keep you going?
A desperation for it to work. I can't think of any other way that I would have done it. I still had the fire in me to want to be a rugby player. When I was raking bunkers, I was thinking about playing rugby. When I was going training and I'd not get picked, I just kept thinking, that's all I want to do, though. If I was to finish, I never wanted to be a greenkeeper for 50 years. Yeah. I thought, what are my other options? I didn't have anything else that I was passionate about, luckily, because if there was, maybe I could have got swayed, if there was something else that I was into. But there wasn't, that was it. So there was, for me, there was never any tough decisions. It was never, should I pack in rugby or not? That never crossed my mind for 1 second through any of that.
But what about the people around you? Say like your mum and dad or your brothers or friends. Were they not saying to you, Sam, I think it might be time to look at a different option?
No. I think, my family, at the time, my older brother Joel came through as the best teenager of his age group. He made his debut at 17, so Joel was already playing first team. He was only 2 years older than me. He was playing first team. I couldn't get an academy contract. There's only 2 years between us. So I saw what Joel had, really wanted that, and my mum and dad still believed I could do it.
Right.
And they backed me, and it was a conversation with my mum and dad that was, I'd say, is the biggest, the most pivotal moment for my career. It was so I got told, you can come back next year if you want, but you don't have to. And then I got contacted by Widnes and Salford, and they said, you can come to us and we'll pay you. I'd be one of the better players there. So they'd pay me, £7,000-8,000 a year just to come on an academy contract. And I said, right, I'll go and train. I went to Widnes, and I'd come from Wigan. You get given like your training kit, and every day you have to be in that training kit. You down to your socks have to be branded with, it was JJB at the time. everything's really strict. Sean Wayne used to make us carry a file of facts around with us.
Right.
All day, wherever you're going. So first thing in the morning, you have to pick this file of facts up, and it had to be in your hand when you got training. This file of facts. Everyone was like, "What's this about?" Looking back, it wasn't about what was in the file of facts. It was a discipline thing. You had to have this file of facts to hand all the time. So I had this. I'd been involved in this for 12 months. I went to train at Widnes, and they turned up, and it was just like amateur. They've all got different T-shirts on, kicking the ball about, and then the coach says, "Right, come in, lads, we'll do some training." And I trained. I was like, "This isn't real rugby. This isn't what I'm used to." Went and trained at Salford the week after. Same thing. I was like, I presumed they'd all be pretty similar to every club had the similar academy setup, only under 18s, but it was so different. And I went home and I was like, I think I'll go to Widnes. Although I knew it was different, but they're offering me £9,000 or £8,000. It's not a huge amount of money, but when you're 17, I've nothing.
Yeah.
Or do you want to not have to go to work, and you can go to college and buy a car? And my mum and dad sat down and I said, I think I'm going to go to Widnes. And they were both like, do you really want to go? Do you want to play first team at Widnes? I was like, well, it's not going to happen at Wigan. And I said, I'm getting this money. I'm getting like, a few grand. I can buy this car. I've seen a Peugeot 206 that I could get. And my mum and dad didn't have like loads of money. And they said, look, we'll find a way to get you a car, and we'll insure it. You can borrow your mum's car, whatever it is. Just go back to Wigan, have another crack. So at the time, it was a little bit. My mum and dad still sort of dictated what I should do, and it was ultimately my decision. But when they sort of said, look, do you want to play for Widnes first team? And I'd never watched Widnes. I wasn't a Widnes fan. Same with Salford. It was travelling somewhere.
Yeah.
I wanted to play at Wigan. That was it. So they said, just go back and play again for free. So I did. Well, I actually went back then to my amateur club in the off season. Went and played with my mates just for fun.
At Wigan St Pat's.
Wigan St Pat's. Actually going back there was good for me, because I realised I wasn't an amateur player. I was a lot better than everyone else in the team still. I just wasn't quite at the top academy standard. Anyway, I went back into the academy. About six games in, I just got in. Don't know what, improved a little bit in the off season, pre-season, and that was it. Sort of fast forward 5 games, and Wigan said, "You've done everything we've asked. You've got yourself in. Here's a contract."
As fast as that.
As fast
so
as that.
You've gone 2 years of being kept on
So
the end
it was
of the
sort of
line.
like 18 months of you're not at it, and then all of a sudden, within a month, they'd seen my value and gone, they're probably sick of me being around the place. Thought, I might as well give him a deal. So I got this contract, and that was it. Then I was a full academy player.
Wow.
It was brilliant.
There's 2 things I want to explore there, Sam. The first one is like not compromising, because you've quite understandably the way you present it, you could have compromised and nobody would have questioned beyond going to Widnes or Salford. So I want to explore the importance of not accepting what would have been second best for you. And then the other one is this idea of just perseverance. Sometimes we don't realise how close we are to our goals when we're in the middle of it. So let's take each one of them in turn. How important is that willingness not to compromise on standards or goals or aspirations subsequently been for you throughout your career?
I think it's massive, and I think I got that from a young age from my parents. We were never allowed to quit anything. No matter what we were doing, it might have been playing football, whatever it was, you couldn't quit at it. And I was ultra competitive as a kid. I still am. I only realised how competitive I was when I look back at things I used to do. It was, like I said, my dream was play for Wigan. So anything apart from that, well, I'm not chasing anything else.
Yeah.
It wasn't even being a rugby player. It was playing for Wigan. So nothing really appealed to me. The only time I swayed was when I got offered some money, and it was all you could. And I thought, it's not going to work at Wigan. But when my mum and dad sit me down and say, what do you really want? Well, that's all I want. So it was stick at it. And I didn't know that I was going to get a contract the year after. I'd still be playing at Wigan for £25 a week now if I had to. I'd be a greenkeeper. because that's all I wanted. So it was never, like I say, I didn't feel like at the time I was suffering anyway, and it was any hardship what I was doing. It was just like, that's what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to get there somehow, and at the moment this is all I can do, because I was doing it all. And it was a brutal setup at Wigan at the time in the academy with Sean Wayne as coach. We think back to the training we did. It was full on. I remember one of the days I'd gone in and asked him why am I not playing, and he said, "You're a half-back. I need you to be able to defend against a back rower running straight at you." I said, "Yeah." "On your try line?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you do it?" I said, "Yeah." So he took me on the field. He brought over Ben Kavanagh. He was 12 months older than me, about 40 kilos heavier than me. And I stood on my try line. He stood on 10-metre line. And he said to Ben, "Just run hard as you can. And Sam, you have to stop him scoring a try." So he ran at me, I ran into him, knocked me straight over, scored a try easy. And he was like, "Oh, that's it." I was like, "Okay." And I got it. I understood, but I thought, one day I'll be able to tackle him.
But you've just described this competitive instinct as a kid. You seen your brother, he must have been doing this kind of thing to you in the back garden. So what did that do when Ben Kavanagh sort of runs over you and Sean Wayne's nodding to say, he's proved me right? What was going on internally for you when you're dusting yourself down?
I'm going to, next week, when he runs at me, I'm going to go even harder. I'm going to tackle him.
That was it?
Simple as that. I doubted myself in terms of like my ability. I doubted, but I was the most competitive at training. I was smaller than everyone. I didn't win things, but I knew I was going harder than other people, and for whatever reason, I just thought, keep going. I didn't, never analysed it at the time, but I know that's all I was doing. I was just going as hard as I can, constantly.
So now that you're an older player, and if you can imagine looking back on young Sam at that age, running around like trying to win at every competition, what kind of advice would you give him?
Stick at it. I see, like when I see young lads, and you see like real talented kids that aren't that competitive, I don't like it, because I was around players like that. They didn't deserve it in my eyes. And then you see a young kid going hard as he can, and he's not quite there. And I always see myself in these like young lads, and I'm like, yeah, that's a bit of me. I think eventually, hopefully, he'll get his break. But you get a lot of players that the break doesn't come. Do you know what I mean? If I'd been in a different setup, Wigan might have said that second year, "Look, don't come back. We've got someone else in." Yeah. And then it got on a different way, and I'd have gone and done something else. So there's a lot of luck involved as well.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that was, like I say, there was no other options for me.
And what was happening within the environment? So I get the role of Sean Wayne in this, but what about the other professionals, the other guys in that environment? What kind of messages were you getting off them?
We were all, when you were with your players in the group, there was no difference between someone that was getting paid and not.
Right.
It wasn't. There was no hierarchy of players. It wasn't like that at all. We were all just good mates. We were all doing the same thing. We were all fresh to it. We were all doing this training that was, crazy hard. People being sick every day with the conditioning, and then we were wrestling each other all day, and it was full on. And the group we were really tight as a group. They were my best mates, and a lot of my best mates now. That was where we bonded. Right.
So tell us about that, because that Wigan environment is often spoken about in sort of revered tones amongst other coaches. They talk about the Wigan way, the power of the culture there. What was it that you were experiencing that you could describe to people that have never set foot into it?
So you'd left school, and you're going through that phase of you can start making your own choices. You can decide if you want to go to college or get a job, and you can decide if you want to go and drink and go and do things. But you go into the academy set up at Wigan, and you have no choices. This is the kit you're wearing. Be here on time. If you're not there at 4 o'clock, if your session starts at 4, if you walked in the door at 1 minute to 4, they'd send you home. They'd be like, "You're not ready to train. You should have been here 10 minutes before this." And training, you had to go as hard as you could. And if you weren't going as hard as you could, they knew, and they'd tell you, and you'd get hammered until you did. or you'd get sacked. You'd be out the window. And I touched on before the Filofax thing.
Yeah.
So we all got given this big, ugly leather Filofax. And in there, there'd be goal sheets for each week. So this week I'm going to make 25 tackles, 10 carries, whatever your personal goals are. Put them in this folder. And it was, you'd go to training and Sean would say, right, everyone got the Filofax? Yeah, lift your Filofax up. And then you just have it on your hand, that'd be it. At the end of the thing, right, we'll give you all a sheet, put it in your Filofax. That was it. It was more discipline, that when you were away from training, you still had to think about your rugby. And there was kids that just couldn't bring the Filofax. They'd forget, I'm working on a building site, or I've been to college and I didn't put it in my bag. They just got released.
Wow.
It was as brutal as that. Like, if you can't commit to doing that, and they get chances, you know, we were only young, you get chances, but lads that repeatedly couldn't keep up with something as simple as bring that Filofax to every single training session, and they left.
Yeah.
And like I say, at the time, we just used to think, why is he obsessed with these Filofaxes? Like, we don't really do anything with them. But it wasn't about what's in that book. It's the mentality of when you go away, that's what you're thinking about it, and that was it. It was just intense, but we didn't know any different.
Yeah.
We didn't know any different. So it wasn't that we'd been at other clubs, and you know, I'm 33 now, and I've played at 3 different clubs, and I know every club works different. That's all we knew. So we were in it.
See, but that makes.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject there. Sorry to bother you. I'm getting a little bit of noise on your mic there. Is your phone next to you?
I've got it anyway.
It's just started in the last 5 minutes. No phones next to my monitors.
This is brilliant, Sam. It's brilliant.
Right.
Really
good. My phone's in my jacket though.
Don't think it would be that.
No.
Cheers, though.
It's only when you ask, like, what were you thinking? I'm like, I've never thought about what I was thinking.
Yeah,
then.
yeah,
It
cool.
was just.
You just get on with it, yeah.
Sorry, Dave.
I love the stories about.
Honest to God, the stuff we used to do. If you did it now, it wouldn't be like that.
Well, yeah.
We did one drill. I'll be able to talk about it if you want. Well, I don't know if you can
Go on.
go on each other's. You put us in the semicircle. We trained on a football pitch called Dog Shit Park because it was full of dog shit. And in the semicircle in the middle, you all had to get on each other's backs. One lad on each other's back. You had to run round and just smash into each other until there was only 2 of you stood up. So there was fucking blood everywhere. Burst noses, like people concussed crawling out of the ring. I remember Lee Mossop getting knocked out, crawling out the ring. We're all kicking him, and it was just like barbaric.
Like Lord of the Flies.
It was horrendous. And like now, I think if I looked onto a field in Wigan and there was loads of kids headbutting each other on each other's backs, I'd be like, "What the fuck is that?" But that's what that was
Sean,
training.
Watching it.
Yeah, Sean's like, "Yeah, get your head in, get your head in." Like he was like making it happen.
That was brilliant. Tell us that story on air.
Yeah, and it was loads of stuff. He'd make us train and smash each other and go, "We'll finish when someone's bleeding."
I
I
was
was
seeing
just trying to burst their noses and stuff. It was mad.
Good, thanks, fellas.
Is that all right? Thank you.
You know where you were?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, what you're describing here, Sam, is fascinating. That because I've often, when I've met players from that Wigan culture, there's often a sense of identity around them, and I think that's an important phrase. That there's 2 ways in which we tend to make decisions. Most people make decisions on cost versus benefit. You weigh up, is it worth it? What's it going to cost me? And then you'll decide whether you do it. Whereas the other way we make decisions is through an identity. So you walk into a situation, you say, who am I? What's the situation? What would somebody like me do in this situation? So there's almost a consistency. You act that way in every environment. So what it sounds to me that was happening was you were being inculcated into this kind of identity of this is what a Wigan player does, not a rugby player, a Wigan player.
Yeah, exactly. And to the point of, so Sean had this thing of like, I want good people, not good players. So when we'd go and play away, and we'd go and play an academy game, and we'd have some food after in the clubhouse or whatever, and we'd go and take our plates back, and Sean wouldn't let us give our plates. There might be a lady collecting plates, and Sean said, "No, walk into that kitchen and go and put it in the sink." So it didn't matter where you were. Sean had this, like, the changing rooms were cleaner when we left than when we got there.
Yeah.
And Sean had this thing of, look, you're not owed anything here. look after yourself, clean everything up, and after every game, go and thank the kit man, go and thank the media guy, go and thank the guy who was recording it. He said they don't have to be here, but they're helping you by doing it.
Yeah.
Something I still do today after every game. So they were non-negotiables though.
Yeah, yeah.
If you didn't do it, you were out. We weren't all of a sudden all becoming these like really sort of well brought up lads that wanted to do the right thing. If you didn't take your plate back, you might not play next week. So you had to.
But what I love about that is that some of the lads that you were playing with were from real tough areas, weren't they? Had some quite bleak home stories, coming from broken homes or coming from real abject poverty. And yet they were adopting these behaviours as much as somebody that maybe came from a more stable home life.
And it changes people. I've got friends now that had they not had the 3 or 4 years at Wigan, they wouldn't be the same people now. I wouldn't be the same person. I know, and I didn't have a real tough upbringing, I don't think. But I know other lads did.
Yeah.
They had every excuse to go and be, someone that's, follows the path of people who had the same upbringing as them, and they're not. And I think that does have a massive part of it. Because like I say, from sort of 15 to 18 is a massive part of your life, I believe, for what sort of man you become.
Yeah.
Because you're still a kid, really, but you can make your own choices. So, when I see like academy players and things, I think you probably don't know the impact the decisions you make then are going to have on your career, your life, your family life. I think it's a massive, massive part. And I was really lucky that I had my mum, my dad, my brothers with me, helping me, guiding me through that. And not everyone has that luxury.
Yeah. So you've gone 5 games into them being given a contract and being heralded as the coming thing at Wigan. But it sounds to me it's that classic case of it took you 3 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
What did those 3 years give you that when you did eventually break into the first team and the plaudits started coming your way, how did they help you cope with that period?
I think the habits that I got into, in terms of going at everything 100%, being competitive, like we do a warm-up drill, I wanted to win. I wasn't happy if I wasn't winning. And I think that's been ingrained in me from being a kid as well, sort of before my academy. And I think I just continued doing that. And it just became a habit. I think competing was my biggest asset as a youngster, and I know I still compete now, but as a young kid when I probably didn't quite have the rugby brains I have now, I sort of competed so hard that things came off for me.
Right.
But again, I think that's from being a kid. My dad was the pushy parents. My dad was the ultimate.
Was he?
Pushy parent, yeah.
Go on, because pushy parents get a bad rep. We often assume that's not a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean it in the nicest possible way, because he, and it wasn't like we were living. I see people that don't make a success in a certain sport that they tried at, then they push the kids into it and try and live the dreams through.
Yeah.
My dad never played rugby. He played basketball in school, and he was a Warrington Wolves fan. We went watching Warrington, that was it, and then we all started playing. He made me, he pushed us. Like, there was one, I did a cross-country race for school, in primary school this, I was only 10, 11, and I won it for our primary school, and then they said, you won it so you can go into like the Wigan schools competition, and it was in Standish High School, and at the back of this high school was fields. You had to run this course. Don't know how far it was, but it was cross country across all these fields. I wasn't that into cross country running, but right, I'm going to go and do it. And I set off on this race, and I was going for it, and it wasn't. I never had a dream of becoming a cross country runner. Yeah. So I don't think I had the same passion I did. And anyway, I was running along, and all the parents wait at the sort of the start and the finish. All the parents wait there, and I was about halfway round, and my dad appeared on his mountain bike next to me. I was like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm running. He's like, you're not going hard enough. I was going, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Like, go away. There's no adults on this track, just my dad on his push bike, and he's going, I'll stop when you catch that kid up over there. So then I'm getting angry, and I'm just like, right, I need to catch them kids, so my dad will stop. And I was going for it, and then anyway, I ended up finishing third in this race out of whatever 40 kids, and I came off, and I was like, Dad, don't ever do that again. You've embarrassed me. And he's like, you finished third though. See how good you can do when you. And I'm like, yeah, but Dad, you and I was just like, you embarrassed me. You've you've embarrassed me. My dad was like, you finished third. Like, my dad wasn't bothered that he'd embarrassed me. He's like, you finished third in the Wigan schools. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then, the next day I forget about it. I came third in this thing, and I was happy with it. So that's how pushy my dad was.
Wow. Okay. So let's tell us then, when you're going into the environment, how easy did he find it to hand over control to the coaches in that environment?
Very easy, because he knew how pushy everyone was at
Right.
Wigan. You know what I mean? It was almost like, well, I don't need to push him anymore. He knew the environment we were in, because my brother had done it 2 years before as well, so he had a good understanding of what it was like. So for my dad, it was probably relief of, I don't need to push him anymore, because they've got 5 coaches doing exactly what he was doing as we were younger.
So now you're older, have you ever asked your dad what his intent was? Because that, like, getting on that mountain bike and following you around isn't an accident. That's not like a spur of the moment decision. He must have had a clear idea of what his intention was.
I've mentioned it to him. We didn't speak about it until about 5 years ago. I said something to him, and he just went, "Yeah, and you finished third, didn't you?"
He's still saying
So
the
he
answer.
doesn't. Do you know what I mean? There was no. He never got into detail of why. But I phoned him this summer. I took my son to a BMX track near our house. Bought him a new bike, and he was going around this BMX track, and I was stood on the edge of the track, and when he was going down, I was saying, Rex, pedal faster when you go down. Yeah. And I said, but like, lift your handlebars as you go over that bit. Do that. And I'm talking him around all the way. And then he came up next to me and he said, Dad, can you stop talking while I do this? And I looked across, and there was like these 5 dads like having a cigarette, sat down chatting, and the kids were just going round. And I phoned my dad. I said, I've turned into you. I've turned
That's the
into
moment.
you. That was it. I've gone full circle. And
what did he say? Good.
He was like, did he finish third? And I was like, yeah. And I think my dad's obviously competitive, like I am.
Yeah.
And wanted the best for us. And my mum was very much the same. My mum wouldn't let us pack in at anything. My mum was ultra competitive. And so we had that was what our home life was like, and I'm one of three brothers, so
Yeah.
everything was a battle at home.
There's real echoes in what you're telling us here, Sam, that with when we interviewed the Australian swimmer Ian Thorpe, and what always stood out for me, and I can hear in terms of how your mum and dad did it, was he said they used to set 2 rules for them. First of all was, if you commit to do something, you've got to see it through. So you can't join a team and leave it because you don't like it. You've got to stay. But the other one was, you have to wake us up. So if you want us to take you to training, you've got to wake us up. We're not waking you up to get up at 4 a.m. doing it. So it embedded this sense of early ownership, accountability. And that to me sounds like they were two similar strands in your life.
Yeah, it wasn't. My mum and dad didn't always have the same opinion on what we should be doing. My mum was very much, you need to go to school, you need to get your schoolwork done, as well as your sport.
Right.
And my dad was like, make sure you're really good at sport, do schoolwork as well.
Yeah.
There was no real thing on it, but yeah, we got given we were responsible for ourselves getting to and from training if we could, if my mum and dad couldn't, because there was 3 of us all playing and training at different places with just a mum and dad. Mum would go one way, dad would go the other. Someone else had to get themselves there. So there was always a little bit of that. Yeah, you had to sort of take your own responsibility.
So now you're a parent you've got 4 little ones yourself. What aspects of their parenting style do you see you taking on and applying to your children?
They're sort of not giving up on things. I see myself doing that. I think the difficulty with parenting is my only parenting influence is my mum and dad, and my wife was brought up different to I was. She's one of 3 girls.
Right.
And loads of times there's me and my wife are banging heads because I'm like, no, he needs to do this. And my wife's like, oh, well, if he doesn't really want to. I'm like, no, he does want to. He just can't be bothered today.
Yeah.
So we have conflict, me and my wife, over that because she only knows how her parents parented her.
Of course.
And I only know how mine parented me. So there's certain things that I wouldn't compromise on.
Like what?
Like giving up on things. So my son, my 2 eldest sons play rugby. My oldest boy Rex is bang into it, loves it. Training, he wants to be at training and wants to play games at weekend. My son Kane, that's 5, he just wants to play at the weekend. So when he goes in training, he's picking up dirt off the floor and he's watching aeroplanes. And I don't push him. I don't say when he's at training, right, go hard as you can. He's 5 years old.
Yeah.
But I say, no, you go in. You wanted to play for this team. You got your kit with your name on the back and all that. So I said, you go in. So every Wednesday he goes to training and we're in the car and he's like, I don't want to go here, Dad. And can I just sit and watch with you? I said, no. I said, you can go on and you have to do the drills. And
yeah,
he doesn't fully commit and get involved in everything like his brother does because they're in the same team. But I won't let him decide that he doesn't want to go. No chance. He's done it when the weather's bad. We get a rainy day, that it's raining. There's no way you're not going training because of the rain. In a million years, he's going on that field and he'll get wet, and then after he'll dry off and he'll say, oh yeah, I went training today.
So there's commitment. There's no excuses that you
Yeah.
don't compromise on. What other aspects do you not compromise on as a parent?
I don't know really. Any others apart from that? I think we got brought up at home. Me and my brothers, me and my older brother Joel used to fight like cat and dog every single day, and my younger brother never said a crossword, never nothing. And no matter how much we fought and things, my mum made sure that we were close. We were never allowed to say I hate you. If I said I hated him, I'd get the worst telling off in my life by saying I hate you. My mum was like, you never say that to your brother. This is your best friend forever. You can never say that. And I say it to my kids now. They'll be fighting and say, oh, I hate you. And I get them over and because I'm close with both of my brothers, and I want my kids to be the same. And the only way I know I'm close is this is what I did.
Yeah.
I'd never let them. They fight, and of course they do. The young boys, and when they fight and they say that, I hate it. I absolutely hate the word hate.
Yeah.
Amongst them, they say it about someone else they don't like or whatever. I don't care, but I'd never let it do it. I'd never let them do it with each other. That's one thing that when I got brought up, I couldn't.
Love that. The idea of you always have each other's back.
Yeah.
And so let's take that and replicate it, because again, looking from the outside, that Wigan team you went into looked like that was one of their key principles of you've always have each other's back.
Yeah.
How did you find that going in?
Well, it was a luxury for me. I was a young lad going into a tough sport. Knowing people have got your back is brilliant. It was. We're gonna have a culture of you put your mate first, and it's a real team first and mate first mentality, which it's a DNA right through the club. I look after some young players now with my agent Andy Clark, some of the young kids. I just sort of said a while back, can I help out with some young lads, sort of give them advice if they need it and things. Touching on what we said before about not all kids have a great setup at home. Started doing that. Started watching some academy games. You can see the same traits in these academy kids 15 years after I was doing it.
Right.
So it's obviously a DNA at the club.
Yeah.
They're a really close-knit bunch, and they provide success all the time. And we're going to have they talk about this conveyor belt of young talent. That's not because all kids in Wigan are good at rugby. It's because of what they go through as young players.
So, because lots of teams talk about, we have a good team spirit and it's one in, all in, and look after it. That often when it gets put under pressure, you see the exact opposite happen. So what kind of things were happening within that culture to reinforce that team mentality?
everyone was accountable to be putting team first, and if you didn't, you got pulled out. You know, you'd say, look at this, and it'd be really obvious if somebody wasn't part of it.
Right.
So you'd never want to be the one to not go team first and not fully commit, because everybody else was, you know what I mean? You sort of just went with it, and yeah, I watched the Wigan reserves. They won the grand final a few weeks ago, and you could see it. They worked hard on the other team. They were playing Wakefield, and the other team looked a little bit separated at times.
Yeah.
Wigan didn't. They all did the same thing, and you stick with it. And when you're in that process and you get a group, and I've had it over the years, certain years the team's been closer off the field and on the field.
Yeah.
And it gives everyone this confidence. You're almost unbeatable. You look at St Helens, they've been the best team for the last few years. They work harder than any other team. And that's not because they're fitter or they're faster or they're stronger. It's a mentality of we're going to do this for each other.
So for people listening to this, Sam, there's lots of people that go, I'd love that in my team or in my business. What kind of techniques or tips can you share with them to try and foster that?
It's the 1%, things that other people won't notice, do them best. So we, in rugby terms, there'd be people score amazing tries and come up with big tackles, but there's 100 things that the average spectator wouldn't see. Someone working, when the ball's away, working an extra 3 metres to cover a little bit of space in case the ball comes back. These are what we call 1% efforts. And they'd get highlighted after a game and be held in much higher regard than a try.
Right.
Or a tackle.
Okay.
And we'd do a video review, and we'd see like the general things, like whatever went well or bad in the game. And at the end it'd say, right, 1% efforts, and then we'd see. And it might be someone who doesn't get the accolades that they deserve, and they're a player that you need in a team, but their name's not in the paper, they're not getting paid a fortune, but they do the 1%ers right. And that amongst the group was more valued.
Brilliant.
And it was the tiny little details. Sean Wayne says it all the time, anything you do is everything you do. And getting all those little things right makes it easy to score the fancy tries and come up with the big tackles and get wins, because you've got that foundation of all these tiny little pieces together. If you haven't got all them together, you've got no stability in the group, and everybody's trying to score tries and come up with big plays, but it can't be done.
It's actually the small things. And it's no coincidence that what you're describing in a winning culture at Wigan, like Saracens have that, the shit that nobody sees is what they call the 1%ers, or it's all what we call the non-negotiables. It's all it's all those small things.
Yeah, and it's really easy to see it when it's not happening. If everyone in the group's doing it, as soon as someone doesn't do a 1%er, it sticks out, and you're like, that is obviously. Whereas you could go to in other environments, and I've done it when I first moved to Catalan Dragons. There wasn't that mentality, and there was 1%ers everywhere.
Well, that was my next question then. So you've gone through this halcyon period when you first break into the Wigan team, you're successful, you're winning grand finals and challenge cups. Then you choose to go to New Zealand. Now, again, from the outside, going to the NRL is seen as a step up in quality and profile. How was your experience then of having this Wigan identity and going to the other side of the world? What was your first experience of that like?
First of all, I'd had this period. I was lucky in the time I made my debut in 2009. In 2010, we won a grand final. The club hadn't won a grand final for 13 years. I came in, not even 2 years before winning a grand final. So the timing of me going in was really lucky for me, because I won a major trophy in 2010, major trophy in 2011, 2012 we won league leaders.
Yep.
And then I had this burning desire to do something else. It was almost like, I've won stuff. I'm at Wigan. I'm still 23. I'd won the trophies that are available, and I wanted to go and do something else.
So what had changed in that period then, from being the young kid that's working on the greenkeeper, on the greens and not compromising on this dream, to achieving the dream and then deciding that there's something else you want to do?
I think it was that I'd achieved it. I'd got in. I won trophies. I got the Man of Steel, the award for the best player in the league, and I think I'd sort of then started thinking, what else can I do now? I think it was that was the mentality.
And was it achieving your dreams everything you thought it would be?
No.
Tell us about that.
What I realised from getting success and winning trophies, sounds a bit strange, but when we won a trophy or won a big game, I wasn't happy. I was relieved.
Right.
So I had this relief that we hadn't lost. I had this relief that no one else had won. So it was brilliant. We won trophies, but when I think when I think of myself being happy, I never think of rugby. Rugby doesn't make me happy. When I win things, I feel like it's a relief that it was all worth it. We got it, which for me isn't happiness. It's relief. The relief of winning things. Oh, thank God we won it and not someone else. And I'm so happy that we didn't lose.
So how long after like hoisting the trophy aloft does that feeling wear off and the relief floods in?
The next day, it's relief. You're happy, you win it, you go for a few beers, you have an amazing time with your friends.
Yeah.
But then you're just like, oh, I'm so glad we won it because no one else did and we didn't lose. It's quite quick, and you go into an off season and it's only 5 weeks later you're training again for the next year and you forgot who won that one and you're on to the next. So I think achieving my goals early, that what it meant was, you know, if I'd gone into the Wigan team, we hadn't won anything for 5 years, I'd have been staying at Wigan.
Yeah.
I'd have been staying there and I'm like, we're going to go and win something. I want to be successful. I want to be in a successful Wigan team. But I think the fact that I went in and we won trophies back to back and I was getting individual accolades, it was almost like, what else can I do with it? As if like I hadn't dreamt big enough.
Right, okay, yeah.
It sort of, remember when I won the Man of Steel, it almost devalued the Man of Steel for me.
Go on.
Because I thought, well, if I've won it, like, it's not that big of a deal. Do you know what I mean? I'd see Man of Steel winners, Andy Farrell, Paul Sculthorpe, people like that when I was growing up, and I was like, they're heroes, superstar rugby players. But then when you actually get to that level of being a good pro and you win an award like that, it didn't. If the 13-year-old me could have seen me winning Man of Steel, it'd be like, oh my, I've turned into a superhero. But the reality is you're not. You're just another bloke who's been lucky enough to pick up an award. So it's sort of like, after I'd won it, it sort of devalued a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I was going to ask you, how many trophies in, whether it's Man of Steel or whether it's winning that grand final or the Challenge Cup, how many trophies in was it until you realised this isn't everything I thought it was going to be?
2. Won the grand final in 2010, won the Challenge Cup in 2011. Then after that, that's when I started thinking, I want to do something else. And I spoke to Saracens Rugby Union. Now, rugby union had never been on my radar.
Yeah.
As a kid, as an adult, I just knew I wanted to do something else. I didn't know why, but I did. So in 2011, we won the Challenge Cup, and I went to the owner, Ian Lenigan, and said, "Oh look, I want to go and do something else." You know, he wasn't happy, and my agent Andy went to spoke to Saracens. Andy Farrell and his team came up to Wigan, met him, and they said, "Look, yeah, we'd love to take you on." And then I had this goal. Then I want to go and play rugby union. I want to play for England Rugby Union. Very quickly, like, switched my mentality. I want to go and do that. So during the meetings, it was, you know, they decided they want to take me and Joel. So, you know, we were 2 brothers playing well. Joel scored one of the best tries ever at the Wembley that year. Then we've gone into the owner's office and said, "Oh, we both want to leave." You know, so you can imagine he wasn't happy. But agreed Saracens would take us both. They were going to have to buy us out of our contracts. And Ian Lenigan said, well, I want £1 million for the two of them. And the Saracens said, no, we don't want to pay that. You know, what's the split? And they said, Sam's 750, Joel's 250. So they said, we'll take Joel. Joel was much better value for money. And Ian Lenigan said, look, Sam, I'll give you a good deal. You know, you come in the office and I'll give you a real good deal. So I said, okay. I went into his office, signed a new 5-year contract. It was on much more money. I thought I'll change my mentality back. Right, I'm going to stay where I'm going to win more things. I got this amazing contract, and the 2012 season, I went into it thinking, right, this is it. You know, my mentality's back on rugby league. I want to do this. By the end of that season, I was like, why did I sign a 5-year contract? The desire inside me was still to go and do something else.
And what was it you were chasing, though?
Just something different.
What was it? Happiness? Was it like
No.
something different? Is like
Another challenge. It wasn't happiness. Like I was happy. You know, when I say I don't see winning trophies as making me really happy. I love my job. Absolutely love my job. You know, being a sportsman is that's all I ever wanted to do, and I still do. But I wanted to do something different. I don't know why. I still don't. I just think it was that I'd achieved these goals, and then it was, well, why don't you go and try and be successful at something else along the same lines, you know, in rugby. I think that's what it was. So that I signed a 5-year contract. 12 months into it, I went back into the owner's office and said, I want to leave. I want to go to the NRL now. So he lost his head again.
Did he?
Yeah, he was really mad, as you'd imagine.
So can I ask another quick question before we get onto that, though? Like, because the family dynamic there of you and Joel being like looking to go to Saracens together, and even that idea that he's 2 years older than you, he's been the trailblazer, and yet when the money's being divided up, you're being quoted 3 times more valuable than him. What did that do in your relationship?
Nothing.
Right.
Like, no, that had never. Well, like me and my 2 brothers were all really different people. We all play different positions. You know, the position I play is a more valuable position. You know, simple as fullbacks get paid more than back rowers. So that would never sort of change how we were with each other.
So that message from your mum of you never say you hate each other actually came to fruition there because there's no sibling rivalry.
No sibling rivalry at all as adults. Like Logan my younger brother played for 10 years, and Logan never earned a fortune. He was a really good player, but he was a 9 that came off the bench generally. Really good value for money. He was never going to earn the money that I earned, but that was never thought of. Like me and Joel used to feel sorry for Logan because he was only on 60 grand a year. We used to be like, oh God, I'm like, he's 24 on 60,000 quid. He's fine. And we've always looked after each other in that regard. So the fact that I was worth more at the time than Joel had never changed anything between me and my brothers. Money or what we earn or what we do, like it would never. Like I'd love both my brothers to earn 10 times what I earn. I'd never be jealous. It would never cross my mind that it's not anything but a good thing. You know, I only want. I think that is from being forced to be so close as kids.
Yeah, the good habits coming back in later life. So go on, I interrupted you, sorry. So you go and see Ian Lenigan, tell him that you've signed 5 years, but
I want to leave.
Yeah.
And he basically granted my wish. I went and told Sean Wayne first, the head coach.
What was his reaction?
That was more difficult. Sean cares about you. Sean's a mate as well as a coach at this time, still is. And he said, look, I'm pissed off. You know, you're one of my best players. I don't want you to leave, but for you, if that's what you want to do, I want you to do it. So he put that before the fact that he was losing one of his best players. He said, I get it. He said, I fully understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it. And if you want to go and do it, go and do it. I'll sort of back you. And he actually said, I'll come and see the owner with you and explain it with you.
So that consistent message that you've seen as a 17-year-old boy of, I want good people, not just good players.
Yeah.
He's backing that up in his own.
Yeah. He was more bothered that he was more interested in the chance of me doing something I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Than his own team being slightly weaker by losing a player.
What's your perception on that? So, like, you hear lots of managers talk a good game, but you're actually testing that out in quite a brutal fashion.
It's what I would have expected of Sean, though. I wasn't surprised that he came out with that, because, as kids, although it was brutal what we were going through, he still cared for you, and he wanted lads to do well in life, and he'd always talk to us about, when you're earning a bit of money, don't be going buying your flash cars and doing this, set yourself up, and he did want people to enjoy what they do, but do whatever they want to.
Yeah.
Almost, he never pushed us. He didn't push people that couldn't handle being pushed, So yeah. I think that was a part of it. And when Sean said, look, I agree that you should go and do it, it was what I expected, really.
So tell us then about how you made the decision of that next challenge, because you're searching for something really specific now. You've decided the NRL in general is where you're going. How did you decide that the Warriors in New Zealand were the right fit for you?
Well, I spoke to a few different clubs. Then speaking with the Warriors, they had a bit of an underdog mentality. They'd only been to one final, and that appealed to me. I got offers from... Because
of your own underdog story, do you think?
Yeah. And I thought, I want to go there and make a difference. I want to go and be part of a successful team there for the first time. And I think it was because I was an underdog for so long that appealed to me. The fact that I could go to somewhere that had potential for success but didn't actually have anything to show for it, and money was a factor. When I went, I was earning nearly double my salary that I was on at Wigan. I could go and get doubled by going to the NRL, not just at the Warriors but at different clubs, because they've got a much bigger salary cap. Obviously, our sports salary cap, you can only spend a certain amount on your full squad. In Australia at the time, it was double, so I could get paid a lot more, which was a factor at the time. And then the Warriors just seemed like a good fit. I just liked the feeling of the club. I spoke to some people there. Thomas Luluai, a good friend of mine, had been there as a kid. He'd gone back 12 months before. So the fact that I could go there and be, in the same group as someone that me and Tommy won trophies together, these trophies that had sort of put me off playing at Wigan. Yeah. Not put me off, but they'd made me think otherwise. I'd been with Tommy through that. And Thomas Luluai is the best coach in rugby league, and he's not even a coach yet. So I knew that gave me a little bit of security. I could go there and be with someone, although I'm 12,000 miles from home, I'm going to be playing alongside a guy that I've played 200 games with before. Yeah. So it just seemed like a good fit.
So when you get in there, you've got this Wigan identity. You're ultra competitive. You've got each other's back. You do the 1%ers. What do you experience?
It wasn't like that. It was, so the club have got loads of money, so they'd have a altitude chamber in the gym. They'd paid £500,000 for. They had the amazing facilities, and they had everything that they needed, but we didn't play like a real tight group. But there was things off the field. So in New Zealand, there's a lot of Polynesian players in the group, and constantly it was players are overweight, players, they're not fit enough. At Wigan, we got our breakfast made for us every day. We got our lunch made for us every day. If you were single, they'd make your food up for the night to take home when you're in the first team. So you did no planning. Everything was given to you. At the Warriors, there was none of that. So in the morning, lads wouldn't eat anything. You get a break at lunch. There'd be lads sneaking to McDonald's,
right,
and then coming back into this amazing gym like it'd work, and it couldn't. I'd just got to the club, and the coach said, look, what do you think could change? And, I was still young. I was 23, 24 when I went. I was still pretty young, but he said, look, no one at this club's won anything. You've won stuff. There was only Tommy, I think, that had. And I said, you can't tell the players they're all overweight when they're not educated enough on what they should be eating. They're going to McDonald's at lunch. Like, you're asking players, and there were some young players, one now that's playing for Tonga, a friend of mine. He didn't know what to eat.
Yeah.
They hadn't been educated on that. They were expecting to be professionals at training and at home, but they didn't know how to be, a lot of players. And this is first team in the NRL, and it was way below the standard I'd had in the academy at Wigan.
But what I think's exceptional there is, because you've almost blindsided me on that, Sam, that I was expecting that the coach would have said, what do you think? And the lazy answer is, it's not professional. But what you've gone in and gone is, you've not educated people to be professional. Yeah. Like when people say, we have no trust in the team. Well, let's define what trust is and then practice it. You almost need to give people the tools to then let them learn how to do it.
It was an ultra-professional setup. They had loads of staff, amazing offices, the best gym, training facilities, everything was perfect. They had some of the best athletes, the biggest, strongest, most skillful players. But it was only little things like, if they're going eating a load of rubbish at lunch, they're not going to come and train well in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then you can't train on the field. There was players, Conrad Hurrell, who's now at St Helens. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. He could not keep weight off, and look at him, he's still a big lad now, but people like him, they needed teaching. This is what you do, and they weren't. They were just fly over from Tonga, a young kid, could hardly speak English. Look how big this gym is, brilliant, train hard. And they go home and just live like the rest of the friends that weren't athletes, and they didn't have that discipline and that thought of, when I leave this training ground, I can't switch off. I've still got to think about it. They switched off. You'd finish at 3:00 in the afternoon. That rugby league was so far out of the minds that it had absolutely no thought in the head until they come back to training at 8:00 the next morning. Like, I'm a rugby player.
They're not carrying Sean's Filofax around with
them.
No,
definitely not. They'd have ate it. So it was a really different environment, and it went and played there. And my dream was go there and we'll be the first team to go on and win a trophy. It didn't happen at all. We finished 7th and 8th in the 2 seasons that I was there. I didn't play my best rugby. And
so what happened there then? Because this is a really interesting topic for me, that it's easy to go into a culture and often find yourself being dragged down to a lower standard, a set of standards. It's harder to go in and maintain your own standards and try and drag everyone else along with you. Yeah. What did you experience?
I wasn't the only one that knew about these standards or wanted these standards. There was players in the group. I wasn't the one professional. It certainly wasn't that. You had people like Thomas Luai, Simon Mannering, Sean Johnson, really, really good players and ultra professional. But the full group wasn't at that level.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I wasn't a pioneer for a change, and the change didn't happen while I was there anyway. Changed a bit, I think, and I'd hope, but nowhere near to where we needed to be.
Which again, there's echoes in your answer of when we interviewed Phil Neville, and he spoke about his experience of going from the high standards of Manchester United to when he moved to Everton, and he was getting in the gym early, doing extras and doing prep, and he found himself being the only one, and he couldn't believe it after a while, and then gradually he said 4 or 5 lads came in with them, and he felt he moved the dial a little bit towards where he'd experienced. How did you avoid not being dragged down to the lower standard? So, where you could have made the excuse, I've won a few trophies, I'm here in New Zealand, I'm having a good time.
Because there was other people in the group doing it. So every day off I'd go in, like you say, and Gary Neville did. At Wigan, we used to get given a day off, and he'd say, I'll expect you all in tomorrow, you're off. You'd have a day off, but he'd expect you all in at some point. You could go in any time of the day in the gym, but you'd have to go and do foam rolling, an ice bath, get a massage, do some extra weights, whatever. You work it out yourself. But he'll say you've got a day off, I'll expect you all in at some point.
Brilliant. I love that.
So
Sort of a loaded question.
and that was it. We didn't have, and no one ever said, no, I'm gonna go shopping for the day.
Yeah.
If you did want to go shopping there, you get up and you go in at 7:00, jump in an ice bath for 2 minutes, make sure you've been seen and you've done a little bit, right? Okay, and go home. So you still had to go and do it. And at the Warriors, there was players that wanted to be professional as well, that wanted to, and did follow. And Thomas Luluai, like I say, Thomas has been one of the biggest teachers for me in rugby over the years. And he'd phone me, should we go in? It'd be a day off, should we go in? Yeah, I'll go in. Go in and do a little bit. And it felt normal for me. Do you know what I mean? I feel like if I'd have gone away from it and sort of changed what I was doing, I wouldn't have been happy with myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I knew the right thing to do. I didn't lose track of that.
Well, let's go back to that feeling then. So this feeling that we're going to actually, this isn't everything I thought it would be. Did you find anything different in New Zealand?
In terms of
what you were looking for, of taking on a new challenge? Did it give you the satisfaction that you were
it was a new
searching
challenge, and I loved it. And one of the reasons for going there was I wanted to, away from the field, see something else. I wanted to live somewhere else, which I loved. Auckland's an amazing city. I loved the time living there. It was difficult at rugby. I'd come from Wigan where we were the best team. We won trophies. I was a good player. I went to a team that wasn't the best team. I didn't play my best rugby while I was there. We didn't win anything. So it was tougher on the field. But the balance of my life at home as well, I was like, I loved living in a completely different place, completely different culture.
Yeah.
So I look back on my time there as so glad I did it. I loved it. Wasn't my most successful rugby years, but I grew up a lot. Living 12,000 miles from your friends and family, it makes you grow up a little bit. So I look on it, with massive gratitude that I had those 2 years.
And there's a few English players that have gone out there. Like you go back to somebody like Adrian Morley and Gareth Ellis and Sam Burgess, and there's some names that have gone out there but it's not a flood of players that tend to go from Super League to the NRL. So I really admire the fact that you've done that you've had the courage to break out of your Wigan home base and do it. When you look back now, what did you gain from that 2 years that you then brought back when you came to the UK?
Probably a different perspective. I was more appreciative of what I'd had before.
Right.
I thought the Wigan setup was the norm, and it wasn't. I think I learnt a lot. I adapted how I played because, again, I was in a winning team. So for me as a fullback in a team that breaks teams down really easy, it wasn't. I didn't feel like I had to work that hard. Compared to when I went to New Zealand, I worked harder than I'd ever worked at Wigan, and things didn't come off. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I definitely changed and matured as a player, knowing that hard work alone isn't enough. You've got to really, in my position, other players have got to play well for me to play well. So I had to sort of go reverse, like how can I make other people play well?
Okay.
What can I do for them? Whereas at Wigan it was, you go and set it up for me, pass it to me at the back, I'd put a nice play on or score a try. Where I'd sort of change my mentality of, right, well, what I'll do is, I'll do this to make his job easier, and in turn, I'll get the benefit. So it changed being a player that way.
See, again, there's like real echoes there. If you've ever seen that Last Dance documentary, the Michael Jordan one, and that's a really good illustration of when he talks about that idea that he only became a great player when he learnt to be a team player. Yeah. Before that, he'd been reliant on winning games on his own right. Is that what you were experiencing?
Yeah, I just realised it was tougher than I thought, and I had to change what I was doing. I couldn't just wait to get the ball. I couldn't just wait for us to be dominant in games because we weren't the best side. So that wasn't an option. It wasn't that I could wait. I had to go and try and do things, which I was probably at fault of trying too hard sometimes when I was there. I was caught out of position and And looking back at games, I'd be like, why am I doing that? But it was through effort. It wasn't I didn't want to be there. I was doing things wrong because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
The fact that I was trying to do other things as well as my own job, which sometimes would have come across, like I didn't know what I was doing sometimes, but it was through trying to change things.
And how many parallels can you spot between that experience of when you're not being given a contract as a young lad at Wigan and Sean Wayne's got that lad running over you on the try line to being in New Zealand as one of the stars of the competition, trying things and it not coming off? How many lessons did you take from those early Wigan years and apply in New Zealand?
Probably the habits of just keep going. When we talk about not being able to tackle big lads, I ended up tackling them, and that was through trying, and that was it. And that's all I was doing when I was in New Zealand. I was trying. My second year, I had my first significant injury, which really derailed what I could do. But up until that point, I was putting in more effort than I'd ever put in, but the rewards just weren't there.
So tell us about your decision then to leave New Zealand.
Well, it was a well-timed call from Chris Rodlinski, the CEO at Wigan. So I'd signed 3 years in New Zealand, and then in 2015, 21st of March, I'd snapped the PCL ligament in my knee, and I was pretty down, my first injury, and Chris Rodlinski phoned me, and he said, "Oh look, there's a new rule coming in Super League. It's the marquee signing, which means you can have 2 players on any team that you can pay them what you want, and they're not part of the salary cap, so you can earn a bit more money. You can have 2 players that are on a bit more." And he phoned me and he said, "We've got a contract we want to offer you to come back next year. Cut your stay short in New Zealand." And it really blindsided me. I was pretty down. I'd just got this injury in my knee. And he phoned me, and I had a long think about it, and things weren't going as well as I could. And then he called me back and said, "If you don't take the offer, we're going to offer it to Sam Burgess, who's a superstar playing at South Sydney at the time." And I thought, it's too good of an opportunity to miss. I want to go back to Wigan. I want to go and win trophies again. I can go and earn similar money to what I'm on again. And I was injured. And I thought, I know I'll go back there and get some good care, because in New Zealand, once I was injured, they put someone else in the group. I was just waiting for it to get better, and I wasn't really. I've been injured at Wigan, and they throw everything at you. We're going to get this better. We're going to do this to give you turn you to the best specialists and all that. And I didn't feel like that's what I had there, because again, the setup wasn't the same.
Yep.
The physio would say, a bit of rest. So I was almost feeling a little bit undervalued. And then Chris Radlinski called me. While we were thinking about that, my wife fell pregnant, my girlfriend at the time. She fell pregnant, and then that was it. My brother had kids, Charlotte's sister had kids, and we said, look, we've got a chance to go back to what we're used to, and that's what we did. We decided then. So I went to New Zealand Warriors and just said, look, I've been offered this. I'm going to leave a year early, which they basically said we can't grant it unless we sign another player, which was Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who was at Sydney Roosters. They said, we'll only grant you release if he comes to us. So I just had to wait then. I was injured, and I just had a bit of a waiting game to see if this player had signed, which he did, and that was confirmed. I was going back then after 2 years rather than 3.
So it sounds there that it was about wanting to go somewhere where you had a sense of belonging, that sort of family, that kinship.
Yeah.
Did you have any concerns though about your happiness, the contentment of going back? So I get that you're going back to a family unit in many ways, or a place where you're familiar, but did you have the concerns of it's still not going to make me satisfied?
No, I'd sort of changed my mentality. I'm going to go back to Wigan and I'm going to win more trophies.
Right.
I had that hunger again. I'd been and done something else, and I feel like that I'd satisfied that itch.
Okay.
And it was like, right, I'm going to go to Wigan. I'm going to go and win some trophies. and I've got this fire again, and that was it. So when I went back, that was what I wanted to do, and I went back to Wigan, and you know, we won trophies, and that, you know, I got what.
And what was the difference between Sam Tomkins version 1 and version 2 that turns back up after his 2-year?
I was a bit slower. You know, I'd had this knee injury. A lot more mature as a bloke and as a player. I came back much more of a leader than I was when I left. You know, I'd learned over there that I had to be more of a leader amongst the group. So I feel like when I came back, I had a lot stronger vision of how to lead a group.
Tell us how you do that.
I've been really lucky that I'd had loads of good leaders around me. So I'd had people like Sean O'Loughlin, Thomas Luluai, Mickey McClorum, players that they just knew how to lead. And then I'd sort of learnt off them. When I went to New Zealand, there wasn't so many of those people. So I sort of had to step up and be the one to say, no, that needs to change. Or say, look, we need to do it this way, and take a bit of ownership of the group upon myself. So I had a much better understanding of that once I'd come back from New Zealand, where I'd had to sort of almost got pushed to, right, well, there isn't as many leaders here, I am one.
Yeah.
So I'd almost got forced into it, and so when I came back, I was better adapt.
And tell us that experience then when you come in. Give us examples of where you've come in and maybe you've challenged perceptions of, oh, here's Sam again, a local lad, we know him. How you've come in and set the standard or challenged.
Probably relationships with coaches. You know, coaches don't know everything, and the best coaches are open to ideas. And I think when I was a bit younger, if a coach said we're going to play this way, I'd go, yeah, okay, we'll play that way. Well, now I was confident enough to say, well, what about if we do this? You know, if we change this. And Sean Wayne was coach, and that's one of Sean's biggest assets. Sean says, you know more about it than me. Should we do this play? You know, if it's an attacking play with fullbacks and wingers, then, you know, I know more. And I had the confidence then to go, look, I think we should do this, which I probably didn't have earlier on.
Okay. So there's that, because you've also become a leader with Catalans, where you went to after that second spell at Wigan, and then also with England. So how would people now describe you as a leader? So how do you think you're perceived by the rest of the group?
People know that I give 100%, because people tell me. You know, yeah. I don't know much else about what they'd think. But you know, I compete. I try hard at everything. You know, I can put my hand on my heart and say that I give everything when I'm playing. I give absolutely everything, which is what I saw in other players above me when I was a younger player. That I thought, you know, that's a non-negotiable.
Leading by example. Yeah.
That's what Sean O'Loughlin's so good at. Sean O'Loughlin, you know, he'll be a legend of the game. Well, already is now. He's retired, and he led by example. And I remember when Lockers was captain at Wigan, he got loads of stick because he didn't get the lads behind the post and like shouting people's faces, and he wasn't that big, aggressive, shouting leader. They'd had Andy Farrell before at Wigan, that's what he was. And then Lockers took over, and that wasn't that's not how he does it. He leads by example. And when he speaks in a room, it holds some weight. He doesn't say anything that doesn't need saying. You know, he might not speak through a meeting. When he speaks, everybody, that, you know, it holds a lot of weight, that. So, you know, I'd seen that, and Lockers in 2013 we went on to win the double at Wigan, and Lockers had an injury, and Challenge Cup semi-final came along. No, it's not good enough. The final came and he played. The fact that he was in the group made everyone feel better. The fact that he was only at about 50% didn't matter, because it was what he brought as how he influenced the group by just being in there, which I think is it's an unbelievable talent to have, to change a group by not even being your best, just in being on the team sheet. And we went and won it. This was in the, July or August, he didn't play another game until October the 10th or something when we played the grand final.
Yeah.
It didn't. The semi-final, it was should Lockers play. I remember being in the meeting going, "Don't play him, because if we get through this semi-final, he'd have been injured again. You know, the injury he had, it was going to reoccur, and we didn't want to go to a final without him.
Wow.
We didn't want to go. We'd rather risk losing the semi without him than him play the semi, get us through. Because then, if we went to a final without Sean Loughlin in the team, we'd have felt terrible."
And what was it that Sean offered? That
He didn't. Lockers never had a bad game. He was always his standard was much higher than the vast majority of people. He'd go between an 8 and a 10 every week, and a lot of these things are what I said before about the 1%ers. The amount of things that he'd clean up without even, it wouldn't get written in the paper or a commentator would never mention it, but he did all them. It's the same as what Mickey McIlorum does now.
Yeah.
For us at Catalan, Mickey's now that role. When Mickey's in the team and his name's on the sheet, everybody's like, oh, "Yeah, we've got this."
Yeah.
There's a so almost like a measurable relief.
Yeah.
When they're in the team, and that's what Lockers had, and he led by example every single time, and you knew what you'd get from him. So consistent.
So you've now come into this Wigan team where you've got Sean leading it, you've got other cultural architects, guys that are just leading it for you, running the culture. You've come and done that. You're successful again. You achieved the ambitions. Was it different second time around winning these trophies than when you'd experienced it first? Were you feeling relief, or was it something different?
Still relief, but probably appreciated the journey to it a little bit more.
Okay.
Because I'd then been injured. I did my knee in New Zealand, broke my foot when I came back to Wigan. So the sort of the path to get another Super League ring was much, much more difficult.
Yeah.
Which made it more satisfying when I got it. And the fact that I won my last trophy for Wigan was actually my last game for Wigan as well. You know, I signed back at Wigan for 3 years, injured for a year. We didn't win anything in 2017. Then 2018, we went on and won it. So it was my very last game. So it probably held a little bit more. It meant more because I wasn't sure. It was my last game.
Yeah.
At Wigan, I won it in 2010. First time when I was like, I've got 3 more years here. Like, we'll probably win it another few times. You know, I had that sort of that buffer of it's not make or break. Where when I won it in 2018, it was make or break. That was my last time ever in a Wigan jersey. As a kid that joined the scholarship at 12 years old, you know, I'd been 1992. I joined the scholarship. You know, in 2018, I've got 1 game to win a trophy, and you know, luckily we did.
So it almost sounds to me then, Sam, that it was the struggle that was the real pleasure, and that was the cherry on the top. But it was a struggle to get there.
Probably. So now I think about it, I went through struggles as a kid in the academy and not being good enough, and eventually getting in, and then I got a trophy, and then it was, you know, probably a little bit content. You know, it was again a struggle. I hurt my knee, I broke my foot, got back in the team, didn't feel right for a bit, got back, got playing really well, and won it. So the paths are probably not too dissimilar.
Yeah, I can see it. It's like that old saying, isn't it? What comes easy doesn't last, but what lasts doesn't come easy. Yeah. And it sounds
exactly, So I've never thought of it like that, but yeah, there probably is some parallels there.
But then let's get on to the bit that intrigues me most, because I think this is the bit where, when I meet you and we chat now, where I'm sensing a more content Sam Tomkins, somebody that's reached a place in his life where there's a calmness to you, there's a stillness around it. Yeah. When you've moved to France, you've gone with Charlotte, you've got 2 young boys, you've decided to leave Wigan again and go to the south of France.
Yeah.
That's quite a brave move.
Yeah, and the reason, when I lived in New Zealand, we liked that we lived away, and what brought us back to home was we had this change of we were having a baby, I could get, you know, a good salary again, more than I've been on before, and there was advantages to it. Then back at Wigan, we had 2 kids by then, and you know, it's like when you have your first kid, you've no idea what you're doing. You want to be around people. When you've had a couple, it's like everyone's making it up. No one knows what to do when you have a kid. So it was my wife. My wife was quite a big influence on the fact that she wanted to go and live away again, go and try something new, and I didn't. I knew then in 2018, I was 29 years old. Wigan offered me a contract to stay. Marquee signing for 4 years. I didn't expect that contract offer. My contract was up in 2018. They said, look, we want you to stay. I'd already spoke to Catalan Dragons, and they'd said, look, you can come here. This is the money. I was expecting Wigan to offer me a deal, but I didn't think it'd be that good.
Right.
And Ian Lenigan said, I'm going to give you an offer. It's, you know, we're not negotiating on it. This is it. Take it or leave it. And I saw it, and I was like, that's way better than I thought. I thought that was more than what I was worth at the time.
Right.
As a 29-year-old. So I was a little bit shocked. And then I remember phoning my dad actually, in the car, and I said, this is the offer I've got. And my dad just went, no brainer. I was like, what? He said, it's no brainer. Sign at Wigan. That's brilliant. But I'd already had all these thoughts of, I could go and, it's my last chance to go and do something else. And I said, well, I'm still thinking of, you know, going to France. And my dad was shocked. He was like, what do you mean? Like, why would you not want to stay? We just won the grand final. And I said, we hadn't won it at that point, actually. It was before the end of the season. And I said, no, I still think I want to go and do something different again. And although we hadn't won a trophy at Wigan, I thought it was my last chance then at 29. And, you know, I wouldn't have gone to any other team in Super League apart from Catalan. Because? Well, every other team's similar.
Right.
If I'd left Wigan and gone to Warrington, it's a place in the northwest, rugby town, and Catalan is the only team that have got some difference, and it's massive difference. You're living in the south of France, flying over for your games and things like that. So that then appealed to me again. That thought of just go and try something different, and that was it. And my wife was really keen on it. And yeah, it wasn't an easy decision because I knew what I had. I had it good at Wigan.
Yeah.
And the contract was good, and I was happy. But yeah, that little devil on my shoulder was like, just do something different again, and that's what I did.
See, because lots of people can talk about taking a risk and things like that, but it's like that old saying that a principle is only a principle when it costs you money, and that's what it's done. You've talked about taking a risk or doing something different when actually you've had a really comfortable alternative staring you in the face.
Yeah, when I left, Ian Lenigan said, come and see me on Wednesday and tell me if you're staying or not. You know, this is a contract, there's no negotiating. And when I went and met him, I said, look, Ian, I'm gonna sign for Catalan. And he said, so it's not about money, this, is it? And I said, no. And he said, well, I'm happy then. Because he knew I was going for, I wasn't just trying to get an extra few euros or pounds, because he'd offered me a brilliant deal. He said, it's not about money, it's about you doing something different, isn't it? I said, yeah, and we'd been here previously when I wanted to go and do something different, so he knew me. And he said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Shook my hand. There was no bad words, you know, finished at Wigan on a really positive note, and Wigan's a good club in the terms of when you've played at Wigan, you're still a Wigan player forever.
Yeah.
You know, and like in the gym, Wigan have got the best setup in Super League by far. They've got this amazing gym. And we've been training there with England this week, and I've never spent much time there before. And there's a board on the wall, and on a Wednesday morning, they run a gym class, like a CrossFit gym circuit thing. Any player that's ever played for Wigan can go in there and train. It's all free, it's all run, and all you have to do is sign the board, and it's a massive board of ex-player. It just says ex-Warriors, and you sign it and put your heritage number on it.
Wow.
And that's It doesn't matter if you play one game for
Doesn't
Wigan
matter. You belong.
or 100 games for Wigan. You're a Wigan player. You've got your heritage number, and that's special, and that means you're part of that forever. And mid-season, I just needed to do. We had a mid-season international in England, so I stayed over after our game, and I just said to Rads, "Can I just use the field at your training ground? I just want to do some running." He said, "Yeah, come in whenever you want." And I said, "Well, when are the lads training?" He said, "That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Just come in whenever you want. Come in." I said, "Well," so I ended up texting one of the lads, like, "When you train, I don't want to come and train while you are. You know, I'm in an opposition team." Anyway, I booked out a time and I said to Rads, I'm going to come on Wednesday, 10 o'clock. So, okay. And I walked into the facility at Wigan, a big screen TV on reception. Wigan Warriors welcomes Warrior number 1006, Sam Tomkins. I was like, they don't need to, I'm just going running on the field at the back. But the fact that the club, they want you to know that you're still a part of everything.
That's the 1%.
Yeah, exactly. And I went in and I was a little bit humbled, a bit like, almost embarrassed when I went in. The lady on reception, "Oh, Sam, you know, Chris said you were coming in. Do you need anything? The change rooms are open," and showed me around. And I play for another team. I'm trying to beat Wigan.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But what comes before the fact that I play for another team and that I want to beat Wigan and is the fact that I played there before and I'm a Wigan player, and that's what you get.
So that's that cost versus benefit versus identity decision making, isn't it? That it doesn't matter what it costs us. The idea that you're one of us is something that's more important.
And Wigan do that better than anybody else. And you know that I could go into Wigan, I could phone him for tickets to a game, or I need to train, and I know that I'd be welcomed with open arms, no matter what I did, who I played for. If I was retired, it wouldn't matter.
Something really powerful about that sense of belonging. So let's take that then and apply it to your willingness to do something different. I think is going to be a really interesting theme of this Rugby League World Cup that's just about to come up, because to do something different, you've got to do something you've never done before. And I think if in the case of, for the country to beat Australia or New Zealand, the big rivals, we're going to have to do something we've never done before. You're leading that.
Yeah.
Tell us about your mentality as you go into this tournament then.
Well, first of all, it'll be my last World Cup. 33 now, and the World Cup is the biggest and best trophy there is. I've played internationals, a lot of internationals before, and been really lucky to do that. And I've won series against New Zealand, but the World Cup we've not won in 50 odd years. So my personal mentality is it's my last crack at this, and the fact that I'm captain of the group puts a little bit more pressure on me, I think, because I want to be that best leader.
Yeah.
You know, I've experienced the best leaders. I want to be that. I want to be that player and that leader. I think as a group, you know, I believe we're hungrier than any nation. We're on home soil. We're going to have the best coverage ever of a Rugby League World Cup. We're playing at amazing stadiums. We've got a new setup in the coaching staff. The backroom staff's all new.
Yep.
You know what a chance we've got. We don't want to let it go past and not grab it with both hands, and that's my mentality.
And there's a bit in that really intrigues me. So you've spoken about, you know, that first time at Wigan, you went out on a high. That second time you came back, your very last game in a Wigan jersey is winning a grand final, and you made the comment that I actually love that, the do or die nature of it, of the pressure's on and you walk towards it, you don't shy away from it. So all the factors that you've spoken about for this tournament, that you're the leader, you're on home soil, this is going to be your last World Cup. Tell us about how you process pressure in that situation then, in order to thrive.
I see it as more opportunity than pressure. You know, you've got one last chance But what an opportunity. Don't necessarily see it as a lot of pressure on you. You should win it, because we're not the favourites to win it anyway. I just see it as a massive carrot dangling. Let's go and do everything we can to get it. It's not. Although we're under pressure because we're on home soil and things like that, I just think take it. Why not? If we're ever going to win a World Cup, why would it not be now? I think we've got as good of a squad as we've ever had. We're playing in some great stadiums. We're going to be playing in English weather that no other nation's used to.
Yeah.
This could be it.
And what kind of messages are you giving the group to have that sense of belonging that you described really powerfully you experienced at Wigan, or to give them that sense of, let's not just talk a good game about we've got each other's backs. You've experienced what it's like to be in a team where all those 1%ers add up.
Well, I think that builds, and it'll build through the competition. Like we've only just gone into camp a few days ago, so that builds once you play together. But one thing I did as soon as we came in camp, we went training on the field. Now, every rugby team runs similar shapes with the ball. I went on the field and it was obvious that we were all going, what's it called with England again? Is it called this? And we were calling club stuff.
Right.
Which stuck out to me. That connection isn't fully there, and it wouldn't be. You've just been at your club for 12 months calling things. So I said after the first session, I said to the coach, we need a printout of all the names of all the players that we've got. Everyone take it home, take it to bed tonight in the hotel, and tomorrow nobody calls anything from the club. Everyone calls the England calls, which I saw as a real, not just important for the way that we play, for communication, but for the fact that you're switching into England mode here. You're not playing for Warrington, Castleford, Leeds. You're playing for England.
Yeah.
So forget whatever you've done for however long. The last season's gone. This is England now, and this is how we're going to play, and we're going to create our own identity in this competition, and we're fully in. And like I say, we've only been in camp a few days, so I believe that will grow over the next few weeks.
And what kind of things are you going to oversee along with Sean? I appreciate that he's the head coach, but what are the kind of things that you think you can do as a leader to bring people from a variety of different teams together and create that sense of,
I think,
comradeship?
Make everyone accountable for the 1% that we spoke about. Make sure everyone's got the same, holds everything in the same value. From squad number 1 to 24, we're all working to the same goal. It's obvious we all want to win, but how we do it, we all need to be on the same page. You don't want anyone thinking this is the way to do it, and someone else saying, "Well, I think it's this way."
Yeah,
we need to get on the same page and all go at it with the same mentality and the same vision.
I love that. It reminds me of when we interviewed Gareth Southgate. He spoke about his most important selection decision was the third choice goalkeeper.
Yeah,
because he said that's a guy that's unlikely to play any game, but it's a guy that's going to have to stay behind and do the extras and do all the hard yards without any of the glory. And if you've got the right person there, you pretty much got the right culture right the way through the squad. And
it's an important factor, I think, when everybody in the group is used to being one of the best players at club. You know what I mean? We've got 24 players that are all starting players at their club. There's going to be 7 players every week that aren't picked, which is a completely alien thing to a lot of players, as it would be for me. And Steve McNamara, my coach at Catalan Dragons, he spoke to me about when he was the England coach for 5 years, and sometimes he worked out his best 17 players, and then the players outside of that weren't necessarily the best players.
Right.
They were the ones that would work as a group. So sometimes he'd pick he'd pick a squad, and he'd get hammered for not picking a certain player.
Yeah.
And it's only in having conversation with Steve was like, that player wasn't going to be in my 17, and I knew if he wasn't, that would then cause a friction in the group. Although he might have been more talented than guys in front of him in the squad, he wasn't good for the group, and that's team first.
Yeah.
So if a player got injured, you bring in a player that might not have been as good as a certain player that got left out, but it worked for the group. And it was only when Steve sort of explained that to me, I was like, oh yeah, because I was the same. He'd leave a player out and I was like, surely he's one of our best 24. But yeah, he might have been number 19. But for that role, he's not the man. He needs to be a number 6, a number 5, whatever it is. He needs to be a starter. He isn't a squad player.
It reminds me of that great story that Jack Charlton tells, that when he got picked to play for England in like 1965 before the World Cup, and he went to Alf Ramsey and said, "What have you picked me for? There's better players." And Alf Ramsey had said, "I don't pick the best players. I pick the right players."
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a backhanded insult, but
I know you're no good, but you're in. And in team sport, that's what it is, and the tightness of a group is massive.
Yeah,
you sense it, and momentum in sport is massive, and you feel momentum, and the confidence you get from being tight as a group is huge, and it's probably not, because it isn't measurable to somebody watching. But when you're in a group and you feel it, you're almost invincible. You're like, look how tight we are. We know we can win it. You get this huge confidence.
Just as we come to the end then, Sam, if Sean was to invite you to speak to the squad and say, you're the guy that knows how to win, what would your top 3 tips be to this England team as you go into the World Cup final that is going to make the difference between winning and nearly winning?
It'd be, when we're away from this group, don't forget our goal, first of all. You know, we only break camp for 2 days a week. You go away from the team hotel 2 nights a week. I'd say we've got 6 weeks. That's all it is. It's not a massive sacrifice. In them 2 days, do the right things. I'd also said, do everything you do at club level. So forget the mate next to you isn't the guy that you've played 50 games with. It's someone that you've never played with. Treat that player the same as you do at club level, because that's the only way it works. And I spoke to the players mid-season about this. The best teams, they work really hard for each other, and that's built up over trust, over a long time of training together and playing together and being in tough situations together.
Yep.
But you don't get the luxury of that playing international. You might never play with the guy or played 2 or 3 games with him. Forget that. Do what you do at club level. Work as hard for him as you would for one of your players in your club. And I'd say believe we can do it. I mean, we've got to. We're not the favourites to win this competition, and I've said in the media, you know, I think we can go and win it. And you'll see straight away, well, you can't win it. You've not got the best squad. You know, Australia, Samoa, and all this. I don't care. I know what we've got. I don't care what Australia, New Zealand bring. Bring your best. You know, it doesn't matter to me because I know what we've got. We've got a really strong group. So I don't care who we're playing. I genuinely believe that we can go and win it.
Brilliant. I'm fired up.
You're in the squad.
Yeah, you'll be in trouble, man. What are the 3 non-negotiables that you and everyone around you has to buy into?
I'd say be on time, put team first, and commit 100%. Don't dip your toe in.
What advice would you give to a teenage Sam just starting out?
Believe in yourself, and all these players around you that you think are really good, they're not as good as you think. You know, sort of back yourself a little bit more, and you know the players around you that I probably thought were way above me, they weren't actually that far above.
If you could go back to one moment of your life, what would it be and why?
It would be when I got my academy contract. I was officially an academy player. I was getting paid to play rugby. I didn't need to do anything else. I think that was that was goal number one achieved, something that I wanted since I can remember. Being a 5-year-old boy, I want to be a rugby player, and that felt like when I got my first contract, although it was £5,000 or whatever it was, I was a paid rugby player, and that was that was a big moment.
How important is legacy to you?
Not that important, really. Everyone's idea of legacy is probably a little bit different, but for me, it's not something I've ever given any thought to at all, if I'm honest.
And finally, what's your one golden rule for a high performance life?
Be willing to adapt and change. You can't stay the same way in anything. There's going to be things, curveballs and things out of your control that are going to come at you. So be prepared to be flexible and change what you do.
Wow, brilliant message. Sam, it's been a real privilege, so thank you for being part of the High Performance Podcast.
Thanks a lot.